Alright, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to take the PV200 and put it into configuration mode. So we're going to just turn the fit switch off, and then we're going to go ahead and bring it the dip switch 1 settings so we can go ahead and configure the fit. Alright, so everything through configuration and testing the unit, usually cancel and save will be using the F3 and F4 keys, and then usually we'll use clear to press back. So head back towards the main menu and enter to save any configurations. So once you have entered configuration mode, you have a couple of options here on what you need to get done depending on which site that you're at. On older fuel Allen terminals, if you remember, dip switch settings are usually set with a power cycle in order to configure the fit address. With the new PV200, we're able to configure the fit address right on the fly. No dip switches need to be changed. Everything is basically done within the configuration window. So if you wanted to go ahead and select option 1, you can just press that on your keypad and just continuously press that, and you can fit it to whichever fuel Allen terminal number that you would like. On option 2 on communication parameters, we can head into there, and you would be able to set your baud rate settings, data bits, your parity, and your stop bits. Clear F3, hit cancel to go back. And then in 3, you have your readers function. And in here, everything for a card reader is usually used for track 2 only. So that is always going to be stayed in that setting. You can set a whole bunch of different options here, and also based on the format cards that you're using at the site, you can actually change the format by pressing option 5, depending on how many digits your cards are being used at that site. And then you can also select on the chip key reader whether if you have a read-only chip key or a read-write chip key for mileage reasonability. And also here on option number 8 on bad reads, you can select on how many times a bad read can be set. We're going to go ahead back to the main menu. Under here in display and pocket lights in option number 4, you can select on how bright you would want the display to be. This is the display lightness. You can actually select 1, which will actually really lower the display lighting. You can just select 1 continuously there to set your brightness. For night mode, you probably prefer the brightness to be a little bit dimmer, and during the day, when it's really bright outside, you probably prefer to have the display to be as light as possible. So you can configure night mode and day mode. So in option number 3, a light sensor here on the top right of the display, and here you can actually have the brightness just adjusted by how much light is in front of the display, or if you want to just set it manually. For display fan on option number 4 here, we can go ahead and say that your fan is installed or not installed. Most every unit should come with an installed. And as far as your pocket lights, you can actually have it set to auto mode, so it'll brighten depending on how the sensor is reading the light. You can have it on, or you can actually turn it off altogether. You can actually also configure your pocket lights by your fuel site controller as well. This option is usually defaulted to auto mode. All right, under option 5, we have sounds. Here you can determine the volume of each numeric or alphanumeric sound from each button that was pressed. You can have them to be louder or even quieter, depending on the client's preference. See, every beep will significantly get a little bit louder, or you can actually completely disable it as well, in case if you don't want any sounds at all. So this works for where valid keys are pressed, when message is displayed, when prompt is displayed, valid card or key is read, it will also beep on a bad card read, and when prompted for a receipt to go ahead and print a receipt, you can actually change the sound of the volume on the beeps as well. We'll head back to the main menu, pressing F3, and there we have the receipt printer. Here we don't have a receipt printer installed on this one, but within this unit, you can actually change the sensors or work whether if you want the paper low sensor to be enabled to let the user know whether if they need to replace the printer paper. There's also a shoot sensor to know whether if there's any issues with how the paper is loaded into it. On multi-receipt, you can actually select if you want the site, if the client comes and they fuel up at your site, they can have 2 copies, 3 copies, or 4 different copies per transaction. Most sites only use 1. Sometimes they'll use 2 in case they want to bring one into the merchant, a copy of your receipt there. And here you can select the max lines per receipt on option 7, receipt currency symbols, whether if you're using euros or dollar signs, depending if you're here in the US or anywhere else in Europe. And we'll go ahead and press F4, F3 to cancel. And then your last but not least, network numbers. So here, depending on your card's configuration, on your proprietary cards, you would have a network number. So if you have one or more than one site that has 2 different fuel island terminals, or if there's dedicated drivers going to one site and then there's dedicated drivers coming to this site, or if you want to have both drivers from each location be able to fuel at the same site, you can actually go ahead and input up to 6 network numbers at your site. So by doing that, you can go ahead and select 1 for the first one. You'll see the cursor prompt come up, and then you can set your network number for one site. And if you have another site that you would like those drivers to come and be able to take advantage of fueling at this site, you can go ahead and press enter here. That will save the first line there. Go ahead and hit 2. Cursor will pop up, and then you can set your next network number, and then both different sites should be able to fuel at this location. So you hit F4 to save, cancel to go back into the main menu. Under utilities here, you can actually set the unit back to factory defaults, whether if you'd like to start over again and just reconfigure from scratch. And in here, you can also perform a firmware upgrade or an image update. And that's it for PV200's in configuration mode.